Okay. Good evening. I'd like to call to order the town council meeting of August 11. I believe this is the last dog day of summer. Roll call, please, Sharon.
Councilmember Alves, Councilmember Wernicott, Councilmember Richards, Vice Mayor Hughes,
Here.
Mayor Derwin.
Here. Thanks, Sharon. Oral communications. This is the portion of the evening when you may speak about anything that is not on the agenda, understanding that we cannot take action or speak back. You may speak once for up to 3 minutes. Sharon, are there any members of the public who would like to speak under oral communications?
There are no hands raised.
Okay. Right now, we will move on to presentations. And is our guest here? Is our special guest here?
Don't see him yet.
Okay, then perhaps I should leave this and come back.
Yeah, through the chair, my suggestion is to go ahead to consent calendar and hopefully the rabbi joins us.
Great. All right. We will hope that the rabbi will be with us shortly. In the meantime, we will move on to consent.
Sorry.
Madam Mayor, I see a hand up from the public. I think there was somebody put a hand up late for public comment.
Okay.
Sorry, this is Rita Comas Whitney, just a point of order. I only saw 2 council members there and I did not notice a quorum. I just saw, and I'm just wondering how we're proceeding without a quorum.
There were
Okay.
3. We had a roll call. There were 3 of us.
We have 3. That's
Oh, thank you.
There are now 4.
Now you have 4. All right, sorry about that. Had to change computers. Oh, no idea why.
okay. All right. And the rabbi is still not here? Okay. We're going to move on to
Oh,
consent.
yes, he is. He just joined.
Uh,
It's chaos tonight.
Okay. May I do the presentation now? Yes, may I? All right. All right. Okay, tonight we have a special guest, Rabbi Meyer, Brooke. I met the rabbi after he sent me an email introducing himself, explaining that he and his wife, Dossie, had come to Portola Valley to open an Chabad community center for the Portola Valley and Woodside Jewish community. He wanted to get together in person to share ideas and insights to help the Chabad excel, not only for the Jewish population, but also for the greater community. Intrigued, I invited the vice mayor and town manager, and we arranged to meet at the picnic bench in the Redwood Grove behind Town Hall. I was immediately struck by this young man's energy, vision, and compassion, and his unwavering commitment to creating a space where everyone feels a sense of belonging. Our chat was magical, and I rode that high for a few days. I believe our community is having a collective anxiety attack on many fronts right now. The drought, risk of a devastating wildfire, the seemingly unending pandemic. Then there is the state housing mandate, the Stanford Wedge Project, people parking at the foot of Golden Oak to walk across the street to Zotz. The list goes on and on. That's why I don't think there could be a better time for Rabbi Meyer Brooke to bring his buoyant and healing spirit, born out of true altruism, to all of us in Portola Valley. Plus, he's got a little edge of a New Yorker's dry sense of humor, and that always perks me up. Tonight, it is an honor to introduce Rabbi Meyer Brooke. Please join me in welcoming him to Portola Valley. Rabbi, please.
I never got such an introduction. So special. Thank you. Thank you so much for inviting me, and thank you so much for having me here. Firstly, I want to just thank the mayor, the vice mayor, and Jeremy, the town manager, for such a wonderful meeting together. I felt very warm and loving acceptance and real interest in hearing what we have to offer and how we can be part of the community. It really means a lot to us. I don't know if any of you heard of Chabad before. Chabad is a global organization. It's a Jewish organization that has over 5,000 institutions throughout the world in over 100 countries. The joke is that wherever you go, I think I told this to the mayor, and that you're going to see Coca-Cola and Chabad, because we're really in every corner of the world, which is very, very special. There's a lot of Jewish organizations out there. There's a lot of organizations generally out there. But what's very special about this is that we're a very traditional, and I would say Chabad in essence is religious people. Rabbi Schneerson, who headed Chabad from 1951, is a religious rabbi, but his impact was on every single person that he met: secular Jews, religious Jews, Gentiles, every politician from the different states and the different countries. He met with all different sorts of people, and people were really impressed by his I call it holiness, but on a material level, he was a very smart, genius individual who really had a tremendous impact. And the Rebbe was actually awarded in the 1980s with the Congressional Gold Medal, which I don't think many civilians receive. It was a very unique award. And since then, every single year on his birthday, which we go by the Hebrew calendar, I think the first year it was in April. Every year it's a different date every single year, but on his Hebrew birthday, which is around April, there's Education Day USA, which is really a day honoring the Rebbe's impact on education in the US. So I just want to introduce myself. We are, I follow the Rebbe's passion and mission to bring Judaism, to bring spirituality, to bring education, to bring help and spiritual guidance, physical, any family guidance in every sort of way to the people of Portola Valley and Woodside. As I said, we're all over in the world. Portola Valley hasn't had anyone till now for some reason, and we're here for every single person, Jewish or non-Jewish. The mayor, if she wants to elaborate, we did speak about a special thing for the schools, which is going to really be a drug prevention, suicide prevention, and drug prevention for the schools. We're working. We have a few meetings set up now with the schools to start a special program for the Portola Valley District, and hopefully Woodside as well, to bring some sort of program. It's not a religious program; it's a general drug prevention program for the schools. So we're looking forward to that, and I hope you guys can meet my wife. Hopefully next meeting she'll be on. We're a team, we work together. And thank you for having me. And I'm gonna stay on a little. I would love to hear if anyone has any questions, or if no questions, I'll just listen in to what else is happening for another few minutes, and then we'll move on. I don't know how these meetings work. It's my first time, I don't know.
Yeah, you can listen. Does anyone have a question for the rabbi? Okay.
I could say this: if no one has a question, then no one's Jewish here. That's a good thing. Just Jewish people always have the questions.
I think there is one.
Yeah, my mother's Jewish, means I'm Jewish. I suppose,
Okay.
I suppose I should make a comment, if I may.
More than one.
The chair. I just wanted to say that I was delighted that you'd made contact with the superintendent of the Portola Valley School District. I think that's a great burgeoning relationship. So I wish you all the success with that program.
Thank you so much. Hopefully we're gonna have our meeting sometime next week. Thank you, Jeremy.
Do any community members have a question? Are there any hands? Let's see, I'll look over there too. Attendee.
There are no hands raised.
Nope. Okay. All right. Well, it's great to see you again. I hope to see you soon.
Thank you so much.
Back again and bring Dossie. And I hope your little boys are doing well.
Yes. Thank you.
All righty. Thank you. Bye-bye.
Thank you.
Okay, let's go. Now we will go on to the consent agenda. Anyone from the public may comment on an item on the consent agenda. You may speak up to 3 minutes for each item. However, only the council can pull an item from the consent agenda. Would anyone in the community like to make a comment about something on the consent agenda? Okay, I don't
No
see,
hands are raised.
don't see any hands. Wow. All righty. Then from the council, would anyone like to pull one of the items on the consent agenda? Sarah?
Yes, let me get the item number. It's the one about the assistant town manager.
Item number 14,
Thank you. Yes,
John, Jeff, Craig, anything? Nope. All right, do I have a motion to approve all the items on the consent agenda except for item number 14?
So moved.
Moved by Craig, seconded by Jeff. Discussion? Okay, roll call, please, Sharon.
Councilmember Alves,
Aye.
Councilmember Warnickoff,
aye.
Councilmember Richards,
Aye.
Vice Mayor Hughes,
Aye.
Mayor Derwin.
Aye. Okay, Sarah, item number 14.
Yeah, I just had a question about this one. And Jeremy, I was wondering, and this is part of me still somewhat being a newbie, I guess, is if you could describe where you see the difference in the old job description versus the new job description for both of the jobs, because my understanding is is it both of them that have changed a bit or just one of them?
Through the chair, both have changed. We've had the assistant town manager position on job description on the books for some time, and it's been filled occasionally, but has not been filled in approximately 8 to 10 years. I created the assistant to the town manager position in 2017 and promoted Brandy DeGarmo into that position from sustainability manager. The difference between the two positions is that the assistant to the town manager is a management and analyst level position that can support departments and the town manager through a variety of ways. The assistant town manager position is a step up. It is in many ways the number 2 on the staff level. It has managerial opportunities when the town manager is unavailable, and will support more strategic and fiscal operations than the assistant to the town manager position did. And candidly, is the assistant to the town manager position developed over time, there was probably a few more items that ultimately ended up in that bucket that would be better suited for an assistant town manager position. This was an opportunity to clarify those roles a bit more. There are areas that either position would have lead responsibilities, including IT, sustainability, and a few other areas, regardless of what level it is.
So is it kind of fair to say that like the previous structure, it's kind of somewhere between those two roles, and now it's going to be 2 roles, and one is a higher level and one is an analyst level?
I think that's fair.
Okay. Thanks. That's all. I just kind of wanted clarity about the delta between where we are and where we're headed.
Does anyone else have a question about item number 14? Okay, Sarah, would you like to make a motion?
Oh, it looks like John has his hand up.
And I'm raising 2 hands, actually. I just wanted to point out a little housekeeping item on that item. I just noticed that on red page 122,
Yeah.
you have serve as a resident expert on the town software repeated. It's also
Yeah.
on the first page. Just
So I noticed that too.
kind of thing.
It's that important, John.
All right.
Yeah, that's what I figured. He was just saying it twice.
Okay.
Thank you for catching that. Appreciate it.
Anything else? Okay. Is there a motion to approve item number 14?
I'll make a motion to approve item number 14.
Thank you.
I
Is
will
there?
second it.
Okay, Craig seconded. Discussion? Roll call, please. Sharon?
Councilmember Alves,
Aye.
Councilmember Warnickoff,
Aye.
Councilmember Richards,
Aye.
Vice Mayor Hughes,
Aye.
Mayor Derwin.
Aye, thanks. Okay, moving on to the regular agenda. We have item number 16. This is a public hearing. It's a recommendation by the assistant planner, the planning and building director, and the town attorney. A lot of stuff, first reading of ordinance, amending section relating to fire station uses within the R1 zoning district, conditional use permit amendment, and architectural and site development review. 135 Portola Road, fire station number 8. Laura, are you going to kick this one off? Or is Jeremy? Or is
Dylan will actually be giving the presentation.
Dylan? Okay.
Hi, so I'm going to go ahead and share my screen with everyone. So give me a moment. All right. Can everyone see my screen?
Yes.
Yes.
Okay. All right. Thank you, Mayor and council members. Just to formally introduce myself before we begin, I'm Dylan Parker, the assistant planner for the town, and I will be presenting this item tonight on behalf of the Planning and Building Department. So there are two components to consider for this item. An introduction of a draft ordinance to amend the town code so that the fire station's use may continue in its current location, and an adoption of a resolution approving a conditional use permit amendment, architectural review, and site development permits for a remodel and expansion of Woodside Fire Protection District's Fire Station 8 at 135 Portola Road. And so here's an overview of tonight's proceedings on the item. First, staff will provide their presentation. Then the council may ask staff questions. Next, the applicant will provide their presentation with the council when the council may also ask them questions. Then there is public comment after this with council discussion and decision on the item. So now staff will begin their presentation with a project overview. Okay, so the subject property is the red hashed area on the maps. Is located within the town's R1 zoning district. The zoning map excerpt on the lower right hand of the slide shows the site's location and proximity to commercial and administrative professional uses within the Nathorst Triangle area. The general plan and the Nathorst Triangle plan also identify the fire station on the subject property as an institutional use. The site is also governed by a 1969 conditional use permit that authorizes the fire station use. So the proposed expansion and remodel of the existing fire station is intended to meet the current operational needs of the fire district, such as bedroom accommodations for 5 staff members, fire chief's office, equipment turnaround room, and a new apparatus bay for securing fire equipment per Department of Homeland Security standards. The station also requires additional parking to accommodate staff and visitors. And so just to walk through the expanded floor plan a bit, we have a new 985 square foot apparatus bay, which is the topmost blue box on the right-hand floor plan. A new 287 square foot equipment turnout room adjacent to the existing apparatus bay, which is the blue box roughly in the middle of the floor plan. And lastly, we have 565 square feet of other spaces, such as dedicated dorm rooms, offices, and fitness rooms, which is that blue box on the right-hand side. So this will add a total of 1,837 square feet to the existing 3,971 square foot station. And so in order to explain the parking needs a bit better of the station, staff will briefly describe the station's operations. So the station operates with a 5-person crew on 48-hour shifts. Shift changes result in 10 staff members being on site at any given time. So the requested 18 spaces will provide on-site parking for this overlap, in addition to new visitor and ADA compliant spaces. Also, 4 spaces will be for storage of equipment such as a chipper. And so a new front parking area with permeable pavers will accommodate 10 new spaces. A new front driveway through this parking area is proposed to provide safe on-site circulation of fire safety equipment, including rigs. This area will be ringed with new landscaping, including a landscaping buffer between it and Portola Road. This parking configuration does result in the removal of a large coast redwood tree. However, the Planning Commission reviewed the arborist report for this particular tree and also the site constraints and determined this removal was appropriate in this instance. And so here's just a project rendering from that new front parking and driveway area. And so now with a brief overview of the project, staff will now turn to the proposed code amendment request. So the subject property is located within the town's R1 zoning district. However, the institutional use of the fire station per the original 1969 conditional use permit is neither a permitted by right or conditional use within the zone at this time due to a zoning text amendment in 1987 removing this. As staff noted earlier, the general plan and the Nathorst Triangle plan identify the fire station on the subject property as an institutional use. So staff has concluded that the current fire station is a legal non-conforming use. Given the fire station's current legal non-conforming status, routine updates or additions that would be considered typical for this type of land use, such as the project before you tonight, are restricted. Since the project does involve a reconstruction, it would likely not receive protected status under the town's legal non-conforming code. And in order to rectify this non-conforming status, the Planning Commission recommended a narrowly tailored amendment that would only apply to fire stations. And so the recommended amendment adds language that reinstates the fire station as a conditional use in the R1 districts in consideration of the station's conformance to both the general plan and the Nathorst Triangle area plan. The recommended amendment allows development standards such as floor area maximums, impervious surface maximums, and also parking space quantities to be established through the town's conditional use permit process. Also, this amendment would add a fire station definition to the code. And so with the code text amendment discussed, staff will now turn to the recommended conditional use permit amendment. And so with the recommended code text amendments, the fire station's use is now subject to the town's conditional use permit process. The Planning Commission concluded that an amendment to the existing CUP is warranted to provide development regulations, such as the floor area, impervious surfaces, and parking space quantity maximums on the property. The amendment's intent is to recognize the public safety need of the fire station's use both currently and in the future. The Planning Commission concluded that the required findings could be met for the amendment as detailed in the draft resolution of staff's report. And so with the recommended code text amendments and conditional use permit amendments discussed, staff will now turn to the development review of the project. And so there was an extensive deliberation process for the project. There were 2 ASCC meetings and actually 3 Planning Commission meetings, not 2. The ASCC recommended approval through a 5-0 motion of the architectural and site development permits to the Planning Commission, who is in turn recommending approval through a 5-0 motion of the entire project, subject to the recommended conditions detailed in Exhibit A of staff's report. Both the ASCC and Planning Commission found that overall, the proposed project balances the interests of the neighbors, broader community, and the applicant. And so to underline this deliberative process, staff wanted to highlight some of the resultant project modifications. So parking is now in the front of the station versus originally sited in rear and side of the property, which originally raised concerns with adjacent neighbors. Other modifications meant to address adjacent neighbor concerns are sound attenuation, lighting controls, and additional landscaping areas on the property. The Planning Commission added a condition of approval to increase the landscaping buffer size between this front parking area and Portola Road. As best practicable, to address concerns raised by the town's Conservation Committee. Also, a landscape maintenance agreement is recommended and is meant to address the continued maintenance through the life of the project with periodic staff inspections. And lastly, other concerns addressed through these project revisions included a removal of a sheriff's substation, which was original to the proposal, groundwater and soil testing, and a tailored code language to ensure just a fire station use is conditionally allowed in the R1 zoning districts. So in conclusion, staff is recommending that the town council take the following actions on this item. Waive the first reading of the draft ordinance, introduce the draft ordinance, and adopt the draft resolution approving the conditional use permit amendment, architectural review permit, and site development permit, subject to the recommended conditions of approval detailed in Exhibit A. And staff wanted to also note that the council may add or modify any of these recommended conditions of approval. And with that, this concludes staff's presentation, and we are available for any questions or comments. Thank you for listening.
All right, Cara, I saw your hand up. Was it? You don't need to
It was
speak.
an accident,
Oh,
but the vice mayor has his hand up.
I do see his hand too. All right, Vice Mayor.
Yes, I just had a technical procedural question as to staff's recommendation that we approve the architectural review and site development permits. I understand why we would approve the conditional use permit, but do we typically also approve the ASCC and Planning Commission's review for architectural and site development permits? My inclination, if we don't need to approve those, would be to let the ACC and Planning Commission handle those since they already did. So I understand the need to approve the conditional use permit, but I prefer to not reapprove what's already been approved by the ASCC and Planning Commission in a way that we don't normally do. If we don't normally do it, I may just be misunderstanding that. Cara or Laura, or I'm not sure who's the right person to answer that, but you get what I'm saying.
Yes, I'll jump in. So we have had an sort of ad hoc policy on this. But recently the council, in preparation for some larger projects coming down the pipeline, we thought that we should really memorialize our policy. And so the council adopted what we have been referring to as a roll-up policy by resolution. And in that policy, if the council is going to hear some of the project components, then the other approvals that are subject to the lower bodies will be, those lower bodies will become advisory to the city council, and the council will approve the whole package. And the reason for that is that if you have an advisory body such as the ASCC approving one part of the entitlement, and then you have the council approving another part, the appeal process for the project as a whole becomes very convoluted very quickly.
Got it. So essentially the actions that the ASCC and Planning Commission have taken are not actually approvals. They're just recommendations that we approve. And
That's
so
correct.
we need to do the approval. Okay.
Yes.
And does that, in terms of an appeals process, does that then mean that the appeal of a Planning Commission or ASCC decision would be to the council anyway, but then people would be appealing us passing this resolution now?
No, there really wouldn't be a secondary appeal. The council would make the final decision, and if somebody wanted to contest that, they would seek a writ. But we didn't think that there was a need for another appeal on a project that has already gone through ASCC, Planning Commission, and then Town Council.
Okay, thanks. I understand that.
Sarah?
My question is really just about process too, I think, is what is the reason that we'd be waiving the second reading? Is it just because this has been so thoroughly vetted throughout the process to date, or was there, I just haven't been on the council when there's been a waiving, and so I just was trying to understand why that would be.
Yes, this is always a confusing process. When you adopt an ordinance, state law requires the ordinance to be read in full into the record. And so what we typically do is we make a recommendation that you waive the reading into the record of the full ordinance. And so that's really just a procedural step that then avoids the reading of the whole ordinance. But to adopt any type of ordinance, you need a first reading, and sometimes that is called an introduction of the ordinance. And then at least a week later, you're required to have a second reading. And again, under state law, during the second reading, you're legally required to read the whole ordinance into the record unless it's waived. And then the ordinance goes into effect 30 days after the second reading, or what we sometimes call the formal adoption of the ordinance.
Okay, thank you.
Other questions? Okay, I have a question. I think this would be of staff. I am holding a letter that I received from Bob and Suzanne Schultz, who live at 145 Portola Road. And they are asking us to append Exhibit A. This is on page 242, condition of approval 8. And I think what they want to add is that 2 members of the ASCC review the landscaping plan and solicit comments from the neighbors regarding their respective property lines. That and solicit comments is not in there. And they claim that this was consistent with the approval from the ASCC, and they're quoting. So can someone please explain this to me?
Yes, I'd be happy to. When the ASCC reviewed it, they did include that language to consult with the neighbors. When the Planning Commission reviewed it, they did not include that language in their recommendation to council. So it would be at the council's discretion if you wish to include that language or not.
So the Planning Commission did not feel it was necessary to include that.
My understanding was that it was intentionally removed by the Planning Commission. So yes, I understood it to be that they did not feel it was necessary.
Okay, that's my question.
And through the chair, if I may, the Schultzes are here tonight. I'm sure they'd be happy to answer any questions along with, I see at least one other neighbor who's here as well.
Okay, well, if there are no other questions of the council, I will ask the community if they have any questions. And I do see Bob Schultz's name there. Okay. Wait, yes, Bob Schultz is raising his hand.
Bob Schultz.
Hi, hello, Bob Schultz.
Hello, Mayor. I don't think I intended to raise my hand, but I was planning to say something later in the evening.
All right.
And I can expand on my letter if you wish. Thank you.
Okay. All right. Okay. Does anybody from the, oh, is there another hand raised? Yes, Jan Mountjoy. Jan Mountjoy. Good evening.
Unmute. I have to unmute. Can you hear me now?
Yes, now we can hear you.
I also wrote a letter. You didn't reference the letter I wrote, and
I didn't see yours. I'm sorry.
It mirrors the language or the intention of Bob Schultz's letter.
Okay.
And I added some commentary that said that the process was very successful in the end. It was a win-win situation for neighbors and the fire station. And one of the key reasons I thought that it was so successful was the involvement of the neighbors from the beginning. And I thought removing that language, well, I thought that landscaping was terribly important to we neighbors. I share 150 feet of property line with the fire station, and it's absolutely crucial to my property values and privacy that good landscaping exists between me and the fire department. So I thought that that language should be retained. And it is not intended to be argumentative. It's just intended to mirror the process throughout. We've been participants from the beginning, and the landscaping is important. And it would be, I think, really appropriate if we left that language in place.
Okay.
I'm not anticipating any objections. It's just a process that was very successful, and I think it should be continued, and that language should be reinstated.
Okay, thank you, Jan.
Okay.
There are other members of the community who would like to speak to this item? All right, seeing none, I will bring it back to the council.
Wait, Bob just put his hand back up.
Oh, okay, I'm sorry.
I'm sorry, Mayor. I was just don't understand. Is there going to be more public comments later? I thought it was going to be towards the end.
Actually, I'm sorry, I should have said that. This is your opportunity to speak now.
This is it. Okay. All right. Well, here we go. Well, good evening and good evening to the rest of the council. My name is Bob Schultz. My wife, Suzanne, and I are neighbors of Station 8. We live right next door. And 2 years ago, this very large and complicated project started. Frankly, it's been a long, stressful road. But together with the fire station in town, we feel that many complex issues have been worked through and our concerns have been largely addressed, and a good workable plan has been developed. And so we are supportive of this project and would really like to see it frankly be done and move on. And specifically, we're supportive of the parking in the front and the wording of fire station as the R1 CUP use. We moved to Portola Valley 10 years ago for the rural character of the town, and landscaping is still one concern, as Jan and I alluded to in my, Jan said and I alluded to in my letter. Our home looks directly out at the area that's going to have significant tree removal and a new apparatus bay and asphalt driveway be built. And so we're obviously very concerned with screening. And at present, we feel that the existing landscaping plan may not be adequate, although we're very much looking forward to working with the fire station to resolve that. But as our letter said, we'd also like for that condition of approval to be added in. I mean, this is a very big, complicated project, way over R1 limits. It's an institutional use right next to several residential uses. It's good for the ASCC to take an overall look at the landscaping plan for such a big project and then let the neighbors comment on their respective property lines. So in closing, again, we are supportive. We thank the fire station very much and the town for everything they've done the last two and a half years. And we ask the council to approve this and give the fire station the tools they need to continue their work protecting our community. Thank you.
Thank you. I would also like to invite Fire Chief Rob Lindner and his architects to speak, if they would like to speak.
Sure, we'd love to speak. Thank you, Mayor Derwin, Vice Mayor Hughes, members of the council. I appreciate you allowing us to take the opportunity to make this presentation. I know some of you have seen our presentation through the ASCC and through the Planning Commission. So what we have, we didn't alter the presentation, but we'll try and streamline it, as fast as we can, because I know the focus is the zoning amendment, et cetera. But as far as the fire district is concerned, we need to do something with Station 8. If we look at the past, the present, and the future, this station, I think one of our individuals is still trying to get the presentation up there, but the station itself is about 45 years old. It was built in 1977. We did a remodel in 1993 to 1995 is when it was completed. But since that time, in that 26 years, we do need to make some adjustments. And that's why we've done this proposed remodel, which, the process began 2 years ago. And, the ultimate goal out of this is, for safety purposes, for Homeland Security purposes, we need to make some adjustments, but, we have grown, and the station itself we've outgrown it, and we need to expand off of it. So that's why we need, to add the additional bedrooms that were stated. We're adjusting it from 3 bedrooms to 5 bedrooms. What else were we doing? The addition of the apparatus bay, because currently we have apparatus that are parked outside, and for Homeland Security purposes, we have to move them inside and make sure that they are locked down for protection. We also need to move the turnouts or the bunker gear that we have. Currently, it's in the apparatus room next to the engines, and we need, for safety purposes, we need to move them to a specific spot where they're away from potential carcinogens. So we're adding that equipment room for our personal protective equipment. We have the parking situation that's gone through, and we'll talk about it a little bit more in a little bit, but we want the ability to be able to drive on the property without having to do any type of activities out on Portola Road. So currently, if our units are in the station and we're doing training with multiple pieces of equipment, our additional apparatus will come to the station, and generally we have to back in. We either have to go in through the backside and park without the ability to go through because we already have equipment there, or we have to go to Portola Road, use Portola Road as our backing mechanism. And for safety purposes with traffic and bike riders and walkers, we really want to try and get away from that need. So that's what this does for our solution is we can add the bedrooms, we can add office space, we can have the equipment for the equipment room for our turnouts, the garage or apparatus bay, the ability for our apparatus to maneuver through the property without a hindrance to either ourselves, meaning our employees, or the public. It allows us to have the better training from within the building as well as outside. And we just need to do a remodel. We need to remodel the building with roofing, kitchen, etc. And the additional parking is just needed. As I'm sure you're all aware, our services have expanded greatly, not only on the 911 side of it, but on the non-emergent side, and especially through fire prevention, where, with our chipper program and with our vegetation management programs, we have more personnel, we have more vehicles, and they do a lot of work in Portola Valley. So we need to at least put those vehicles in a spot. And that's why we put in this request for additional parking spaces, because they will definitely get utilized and will still, once again, enable us to perform our operations. Next slide. So I'll turn this over to our project manager for what we've done over that 2-year period with our neighbor outreach, et cetera. Thank you very much.
All right. Thanks, Chief Linder. I'm Mike Wasserman. I'm with Capital Program Management, and I'm the district project manager for this project. And I'm going to speak to us real briefly about just sort of recapping some of our neighborhood outreaches. We just heard from a couple of our neighbors. We've been meeting with them early and often, and we've got a lot of input from them, found out what their concerns were, and we addressed all those concerns. We removed the sheriff's office. We relocated the proposed drive-through lane to the front of the property. It was previously in the back of the property. We relocated the proposed additional parking to the front of the property. Again, it was around the back and the side of the property previously. We relocated the trash collection area to be away from the neighbors. We removed the exterior lighting for the new apparatus bay back wall, reduced the number and size of windows in the apparatus bay. We revised the landscaping and the screening, and we continue to work with the neighbors on that. We currently right now are in the process of trying to coordinate a meeting with all the neighbors to go over the desires of each of them regarding the screening and the landscaping. We're also changed the design so that we can maintain the existing landscape buffer at the neighbors' properties as much as they would like us to. Then also, I was going to speak real briefly about the planning department timelines. We can indicate we've been at this for almost 2 years, and we actually started well before our first submittal. But as indicated before, we've been through the ASCC twice and the Planning Commission 3 times. And then so that's sort of the big topic left here for town council is dealing with the amendment or revision to the town zoning ordinance. I think Dylan did a very great job of laying out much more detailed than I have here. Bottom line is we support the proposed recommendation from staff. I'm going to turn it over now to Bill Gutzel with CJW Architects to sort of address some of the big concerns during the ASCC and Planning Commission meetings, which are regarding the parking lot, number of parking spots, and the tree removal.
Thank you, Mike and Chief Lindner, for your presentation, and thanks to the staff for their presentation as well. Very well put. I just wanted to review briefly the parking lot location and how we ended up there, although Mike has touched upon it briefly, as well as Chief Lindner. Basically, it boils down to wanting to originally put the parking area in the rear of the site, and based on neighbor concerns, we decided to move it to the front of the site. That also allowed us to do a drive-through that Chief Lindner has alluded to. When they do have training sessions or when they have other engines that are covering the site, when engine 8 is out on a call, they have other stations that cover this station. And so they need something on site that those engines can drive through the site without having to drive through the apparatus bays, because those apparatus bays are closed and locked up and they don't have the ability to get through them. Basically, through the neighbors' concerns and ASCC concurrence with those objections led us to the redesign in the current location. And the current location is consistent with the non-residential properties in the area, that is, with the parking at the front of the parcels. Staff went through a little bit, as did Chief Lindner, what the current existing parking situation is on site, with just 7 staff parking stalls and 1 ADA stall, for a total of 8 parking stalls on site. And there are 2 pieces of equipment that are currently parked in the landscaped areas, or in basically the duff from some of the redwood trees that are there at the back of the site. The desire is to try and move some of that equipment out of that area. With regard to the parking that is actually required to accommodate the existing conditions, we really are looking at the need for 8 staff parking stalls, 1 ADA parking stall, which is the current configuration at the site, 2 visitor stalls, and 4 equipment, for a total of 15 parking stalls. The proposed parking, as staff alluded to, when we do have staff shift changes, there are 5 people on site. You have another 5 people come on site for the shift change. That's a total of 10 staff. We are required to now have 2 ADA stalls, which includes a electric vehicle charging station and a van stall. Then 2 visitor stalls and 4 equipment stalls, for a total of 18 parking stalls, which is what we have provided for. And ASCC and the Planning Commission have reviewed and concurred. With regard to the existing redwood trees, they do need to be removed to accommodate the proposed building and driveways. The additional redwood trees in the rear of the property are being removed at the request of the neighbor, who is concerned about some of the potential damage that may occur or that has already occurred to her residence and the foundation system there. So those trees will be removed at the rear of the site. We're also striving to maintain the majority of the plant material that she has basically overseen for a good number of years on a small part of property that the district has been nice enough to allow her to garden in. And we do intend to try and maintain as many of those, as much of that plant material back there as we possibly can. In fact, we just had a survey done in that area. We were not previously allowed to get into that area or given permission to get into that area, or the survey crew didn't believe they had permission to get into that area. So we have gotten in there now, and we have surveyed each and every plant, not just trees, but each and every shrub and whatnot, and identified them by species. So we have a very good understanding of what is there and what we would like to try and maintain and for the future. All of the redwood trees on the property were planted by the district, by the way. And in order to accommodate the parking lot in the front, it requires the additional removal of some existing trees. One very large one out there. We did take a look at it, and we were asked by the ASCC and the Planning Commission to have a supplemental arborist report on that particular tree. The largest of those trees out front there is not in good health currently. It's water stressed. It also has what is called a codominant leader near the top. And that codominant leader basically is two trunks. And in the case of a redwood tree, they can get very large in heavy wind conditions or even hot weather. They can split and fall. Obviously, that would be a safety concern. It could hinder an evacuation route from either the station, or it could go across Portola Valley. Portola Road. Currently, the tree is actually too close to the building, and we did look at the possibility of trying to maintain that tree, but with the parking lot improvements that we need to implement out front, the implementation of some pervious pavers, as well as a stormwater retention tank that will address some of the site flooding conditions that the neighbors have had some concerns about. It was determined that those tree roots would be affected regardless of whether or not the tree was removed or not. So in short, the arborist report indicates that tree really does need to be removed, and the Planning Commission as well as ASCC agreed as well. With that, I will turn that over for a summary to Chief Lindner.
Yeah, so just in conclusion, the main thing I want to do is thank everybody for this. It's a long process that we've gone through, but there's been a lot of time and energy, spent from a lot of people through the ASCC, through the Planning Commission, the neighbors, as they've told you, 2 years worth of stress on what can happen or what can't happen or what will happen. Town staff has done a tremendous amount of work, and we appreciate their recommendations as well on this project moving forward. And, I think, in that 2 years, we have done more than our due diligence, I think, and I think we've answered all the questions from the ASCC, from the Planning Commission, and from the neighbors, and to be able to, within our team, to be able to come to where we are today and be comfortable with the project that I think, it works, and we should move forward, and, better timing for us on getting our project moving. And, we would just appreciate the approval tonight, and we can move on. But I just wanted to thank everybody for all the time and energy spent. And we're available for any questions.
Thank you. Does the council have any questions about this presentation? Okay, I see a little hand raised of attendees. Jan Mountjoy.
Yes, I pretty much said what I wanted to say. I just wanted to add a huge thank you to the fire department and their staff for the wonderful way that they have included us in this process. And I also wanted to reiterate the importance of landscaping. And I need to go back a little bit in history to do that. When back in, I think it was 1976, I had a knock on my front door, and it was the fire chief at the time. His name was Stan Larson. And he says, "I'm going to be your new neighbor." That means my residence predated the fire department residence. And he said, "How can we make you happy?" or words to that effect. And I said, "I want landscaping between us to ensure the privacy and protect my property values." Well, that didn't get into I didn't attend any of these council meetings, and it never got into the plan. Landscaping was not done. And I lived for 5 or 6 years with the view of the backside of the fire department. And it wasn't a pleasant sight. It was not a pleasant sight. And eventually the fire department and I agreed on a landscape plan, but then there was no agreement to maintain it. And I wound up maintaining it, watering it by hand. When that became too much of a burden, I installed a sprinkler system at my own expense. I maintained all the plants at my expense. It's been over 40 years I've been doing that. And when the department first proposed a new plan, they were going to raise that 40 years of shrubbery that protects my property values and my privacy. So I just wanted to reiterate how important landscaping is. It absolutely protects my property value. I could lose the ability to have anyone want to buy my home without that landscaping there. So I just need to emphasize how important it is. And I'm grateful to the fire department for including us in the process. And I would like to continue to be included in the process. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Okay, now I'm going to, well, let me look and see if there are any more hands raised. No. Sarah, you have a question?
I do. I was wondering, by all accounts and from the meetings that I've sat on, it sounds like this was a really collaborative process. I was wondering if anybody knows why it was decided not to have the landscaping come back for one more review. Does anybody know? I'm just trying to understand what the rationale was for that decision.
I can answer that. The condition, the way that it's drafted, would have another round of review on the landscaping. It would be by 2 ASCC members, and the Conservation Committee would have a chance to give feedback. So that is in what's before the council for your consideration. The part that I think that the residents are talking about is the added language to that condition to include a consultation with the neighbors during that review. So I think that really is an area that the council should consider whether that language should be added back to that condition.
Can I ask a follow-up to that? The language seems to be talking about the Conservation Committee as a committee, which cannot meet or act without a public meeting at which the neighbors could take part. So does this not already include neighbor participation?
Yes, I think thinking about it that way, yes, it certainly could. So I don't know if the ASCC, when we talked about this, thought it through to that level of detail that you're thinking about it. So if the item goes back to the full Conservation Committee, usually they form a subcommittee, right? And then the subcommittee discusses it with the full Conservation Committee, then that would be an opportunity for public comment through that forum.
So what you're saying is they may not have intended it to be the full committee. They may have meant, contact a member of the usual suspect or whatever.
Yeah, there are times when we're looking at follow-ups to plans or revisions to plans where we'll contact Judy Murphy directly. Sometimes she'll provide feedback, and then sometimes she'll provide it to either subcommittee or the full committee.
Okay, so we have a couple of options here.
Bill, did you have your hand up?
Sorry, I had to unmute there. I did just want to reiterate that, as Mike mentioned earlier here, our full intention is to meet with the neighbors and have a collaborative effort on what it is that, what kind of plant material will be established on both property lines, including the Mountjoys as well as the Schultzes. And that's been our intent from the beginning. We've had meetings with them in the past. Then COVID hit and things kind of went by the wayside, but our full intention is to certainly meet with them and develop a landscape plan and fencing plan for that matter at each property line that both neighbors will be ecstatic about.
Okay, I'm just wondering if it would give the neighbors a lot more comfort if we could just add the language that they would like included. I'd like to discuss that with my colleagues. Jeff.
Thanks. Well, first, thanks to the fire district, their staff, our staff, and then the neighbors for just working through this over these last couple of years. I've sat on a few of these meetings, and it has been a collaborative process. Regarding the specific question, I mean, two things. One, we have often included neighbors in sort of planting things. You know, ASCC approvals have often had a condition that included, consultation with neighbors and on plantings that were sort of designed to screen between homes. I would absolutely support putting that language back in. It clearly is not adding anything that wasn't already sort of part of this process voluntarily. So I'd be happy with that. The other thing is that condition of meeting with the Conservation Committee is incredibly cumbersome. If the Conservation Committee feels strongly that the whole committee wants to debate it, wants to discuss it publicly, that's fine. But I would also be happy with amending this to say the Conservation Committee or a subcommittee of the Conservation Committee, just to avoid. That's more cumbersome than having the neighbors' input, honestly, in my opinion. But I would definitely support putting the neighbor consultation back in, and I would suggest giving the Conservation Committee latitude to form a subcommittee without having a public meeting about it.
Thanks. John?
Yeah, I agree with Jeff. I think it's been such an incredibly thorough process to this point that we should round it out. And I think probably the language that mentions the Conservation Committee was just not quite thought through. I don't think the Conservation Committee probably has had the input on that language, so that putting it in as a review by two members or a subcommittee of the Conservation Committee makes perfect sense. So I'd say we move forward on that basis.
Craig?
Yeah, I agree. I would suggest that we modify condition 8 to say that the last sentence should read, this modification should be subject to approval by two members of the ASCC in consultation with the neighbors, and as necessary, town's Conservation Committee or a subcommittee thereof.
I make a motion for exactly that.
Do we need a
I'll second that, but yeah.
I'm happy to move towards a motion if there's no other discussion of anything else. I think we might be able to
wrap this
make
up.
that amendment and then move it, unless there's I don't know if there's anybody else wants to talk about any other items here.
Let's move it forward.
Okay, then let's.
I was supportive of everything else, so yes.
Now I've lost my, here. Can someone make a motion using the language? I've just lost my agenda. Using the language that was spelled out in the packet. Cara was really good to put.
So I would, if Sarah's okay with it, replace her motion with the order that we have on the agenda. So start off with introducing and waiving the first reading of the attached ordinance,
Right.
Which is the zoning change.
Yeah.
Second.
So are we making two different motions?
Yeah, so I'm going to do, I've done one on the zoning change, and then we can do the conditional use permit, architectural review, site development permit with that modification after.
Is that okay, Cara? Okay, all right. Is there a second?
I believe Sarah seconded.
Okay, is there discussion? Okay, roll call, please, Sharon.
Councilmember Alves,
Aye.
Councilmember Wernicott,
Aye.
Councilmember Richards,
Aye.
Vice Mayor Hughes,
Aye.
Mayor Derwin.
Aye. And
Then I would make a motion to adopt a resolution approving the conditional use permit amendment, architectural review and site development permit with the amendment that was made earlier.
is there a second?
Second,
Second by John Richards. Is there discussion? Roll call, please.
Councilmember Alves,
Aye.
Councilmember Wernicott,
Aye.
Councilmember Richards,
aye.
Vice Mayor Hughes.
Aye.
Mayor Derwin.
Aye. All right, I think we did it. Congratulations to everybody. Congratulations to the neighbors, the staff, the fire department, the architects, everybody. We all look forward to that groundbreaking.
Thanks very much.
Sure.
And thank you all for everything on this.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Thank you, everybody. Appreciate it. Jeremy, thank you, and to your entire staff.
Thank you. Thanks, Chief.
All right. I think that is it for the regular agenda, correct? And we are moving
Oh, we
on.
have one
No,
more
we have one
item.
more item.
Oh, the safety element. I'm
Yep.
sorry. Item number 17, recommendation by Planning and Building Director, safety element update, process and contract with urban planning partners. Is this Laura?
Yes, let me get my presentation and share my screen. Okay, looks good on my end. Looks okay to everybody over there on your ends? Okay, great.
That's good.
Thank you. Good evening, Mayor, council members, and members of the public. For those that don't know me, I'm Laura Russell, Planning and Building Director. So this item is talking about the safety element update, a contract for a consultant to help us with that work and the approach and the community outreach. So if anyone's new to this, we'll follow our typical process, staff report, council questions, public comments, and then council discussion. So first, what is a safety element? It's one of the required elements of the general plan. It's required under state law, and elements are like chapters, if you're not familiar with that terminology. And the goal, according to the state guidance, is to reduce the potential short and long-term risk of death, injuries, property damage, economic and social dislocation resulting from fires, floods, droughts, earthquakes, landslides, climate change, and other hazards. So we study all of these different potential hazard areas, and then we create goals and policies aimed at reducing those risks. The town's current safety element was adopted in July 2010, and quite a bit has changed since that time, both in regards to the state law as well as the context that we're all living in. And so the safety element update process. So we now, under state law, are required to review the safety element every 8 years. It's on the same element as the housing, the same cycle as the housing element. So this really reflects a change in state law to elevate both the housing element and the safety element into being like out in the public eye and reviewed on a regular basis by policymakers. So this is a change that's happened over the last couple of years. Safety elements were often kind of ignored in the past and not updated frequently. So now we do it every 8 years. And the process includes research, collecting data, mapping, analysis, a lot of technical work that's done from lots of different sources. There's a lot of governmental agencies now that provide a lot of this information, which wasn't so available in the past, and a lot more mapping and data than we've ever had before. So we bring all of that together, and then of course we receive public comments. There's review by certain California state agencies. Notably, that includes a review by CAL FIRE. They have a special division of the planning. They have a planning department, basically, in CAL FIRE that reviews these safety elements. And we have a good idea of what kinds of things they're going to be looking for through a workshop that staff went to. There's also a required review by Woodside Fire Protection District in the process. Anytime we adopt a policy document like this, we have to review under CEQA, which is the California Environmental Quality Act. And then for any general plan amendment, there's always Planning Commission review and Town Council review and adoption. So this process will be guided very strongly by both state law as well as the guidance that the state puts out. And so the law itself includes very specific things that we have to analyze, and this has been updated over the years. So there's very specific information about floods, for example, right? Not our biggest issue, but there's new language over the last few years, particularly related to fire safety, and then a new way to approach what is considered thought of like network accessibility, like how does your vehicle network operate and what's the relationship to evacuation planning? So that's a new area that would be studied with this safety element update. And then the Office of Planning and Research, that's OPR, is the state department that writes the guidance for these types of things. So we refer to OPR guidance in numerous areas for planning in California. So they have a big piece of guidance that talks about how you update the required elements of your general plan. So we'll be referring to that. That includes best practices and a checklist of the required items. That's just a few years old now, so it doesn't have some of the latest information, particularly around fire safety planning. But OPR also has a very recent document, which is the Fire Hazard Planning Technical Advisory. And this is actually referenced in the state law as well. It's currently a draft that was put out late in 2020. I did reach out to the staff at OPR and say, when is the final coming? And they couldn't guarantee a date. They said it's been very challenging to update it. We can all understand some of those delays, but I put in a plea to please get it done for those of us that are working hard on these safety elements. But in the meantime, it has very good guidance that will be very helpful to us. And it includes fire hazard planning guidance. And so this is specific. The way I'm thinking about it is it's kind of a description of what we should study and how we should study it. So what should we be thinking about when we update our safety element? It also includes example policies. There are a lot of agency resources in that guidance, and there's also a lot of examples from other cities that we can look to. So in terms of consultant selection, it is necessary for us to have qualified consultants to assist with this work. It's specialized, it's complicated, and so we really want to make sure we have a team of professionals that we're working with. Staff is proposing that we use the same team as we're using for the housing element update process. So Urban Planning Partners responded to our request for qualifications for both the housing element update as well as the safety element. So their team includes Fair & Peers, who's a leading firm in transportation planning, working on the evacuation portion and analysis of this, Baseline Environmental, and Deer Creek Resources. And those are the fire safety experts on the team. And you might recall when we talked about the housing element update, Urban Planning Partners and Deer Creek Resources are working together on a number of cities that have very high profile fire safety issues, including actually Paradise. So staff thinks that the benefits of using the same consultant team would improve communication, definitely help with schedule management. You know, there's an important interplay between these different areas of work. We think it'll make it smoother and easier integration of the safety element concepts into the housing element process. And there's significant cost savings and coordination benefits for the CEQA review, because then we just have one firm that's doing the CEQA and they would be up to date on both our housing element and our safety element. So turning now to community engagement, this is important always for everything that we do. We would anticipate some community-wide outreach, perhaps in the form of a community meeting or an open house, so that the form of that would have to vary depending, what the pandemic conditions are and our ability to do hybrid meetings and those types of technical things. But there's a number of ways we could do this, either online via Zoom or in person if it was appropriate, depending on the timing. As we all know, the town has very established committees that have very long and detailed expertise in the areas that overlap with the safety element planning work. So we would propose that the Ad hoc Wildfire Preparedness Committee, Emergency Preparedness Committee, Sustainability, and Geologic Safety Committees all have a role in this, and they would have the opportunity to review the draft goals, policies, and implementation measures. as they're developed, so they can really bring that expertise into the conversation. And then, as always, there would be Planning Commission review and opportunity for the public to participate in that. And then we would do strong communications on this as well, using the town news and social media. We would create an e-notify just for this topic so that people who are interested in tracking it could receive emails. And then we'd be creating website content as well. So we have talked about this before when we talked about the housing element update, but I think it's worth repeating that the town is in a very competitive consultant environment right now. All of the cities in the Bay Area are updating their housing elements at the same time, and most are updating their safety elements as well. So planning and environmental services and transportation consultant services have been really difficult to secure and really expensive for communities to access. On the flip side of that, we do have opportunities for collaboration, we think, on this. So the county, we have heard, is going to be leading some kind of collaboration on safety elements. We don't know their scope yet. We only have the very limited information. We don't have details. We are ahead of many communities right now. And so we feel like that's important for us, given the level of priority for the community. But it does create just a bit of uncertainty in trying to get started on this when we're waiting for the county to decide their scope. But we anticipate that information coming from them shortly, like probably within the next month, we'll have much more information on what they're going to be doing. There's also some aspects of the local hazard mitigation plan that the town is currently updating that will feed into the safety element process. There's, as I mentioned, a large number of outside agencies now that have tremendous resources that could help us around data and mapping, bringing all those things together. So staff does recommend that we begin this process, given the really high importance of it to the community, and also because the analysis performed with the safety element is going to be useful and will inform the housing element update process, which, as you know, is on a tight timeline. So the cost of the proposed scope of services, the primary scope is $89,466. There's a contingency of just under $11,000, and that's for some modeling work. At this time, we're not sure if the state is going to finish the modeling that they are proposing to do on a timeline that will benefit us. So we wanted to include that contingency so we could do that modeling ourselves if we need to through Fair and Peers. So the total budget with the contingency is just over $100,000. So those costs would be spread over this fiscal year and the next fiscal year. And the current fiscal year budget includes $20,000 for this work. I want to point out that there's a typo in the written staff report. It says $25,000, but the actual budgeted amount is $20,000. So we would propose that staff would incorporate that additional needed funds into the September budget revision, which is coming back to you shortly, to address that difference at that time. And that would give us an opportunity also. A lot of this work would happen in this fiscal year, but certainly some of it would happen in the next. And then we can work with the consultant a little bit to see how that may be allocated across the years. It will also take significant staff resources to be able to complete this. So again, from my department, I would be overseeing. The town manager would also have a strong role in coordination with other emergency preparedness initiatives, local hazard mitigation plan, other work that the town is doing. Our new senior planner, Adrian Smith, would be the day-to-day person. She's already the day-to-day person for the housing element, will be in near constant communication with urban planning partners. Our assistant planner, who you just heard from this evening, would be working on specific tasks related to this in support of it. Our communications and community engagement analysts would be working on the public outreach and the news and the website. And then the public works director, Howard, would also have a role in this in terms of providing technical advice and assistance. And though not our staff, it's worth pointing out that Woodside Fire Protection District staff would be invited to participate throughout this process, and they would also have the role in reviewing the draft, as I mentioned earlier. So in conclusion, staff recommends that the council approve the contract with urban planning partners and provide any direction on the scope and approach or community outreach or anything that you'd like us to implement as we go forward with this important work. So that concludes my presentation. I'd be happy to answer any questions.
Thank you, Laura. Are there questions from the council? Sarah.
My question has to do with how everything kind of comes together from a higher level. I know we're working with urban planning partners on the housing element. And so could you just describe the kind of framework and the contracts as it relates to the housing element, the safety element, as well as what we approved a couple meetings ago related to the evacuation study?
Laura, do you want me to take that?
Yeah, why don't you start, Jeremy? Thanks.
Thank you, sir, for the question. I think it's an important one. Let me speak particularly to the evacuation study. So the council reviewed in April RFP for an evacuation study that would consist of essentially two components. One component related to doing some modeling in the town to understand the time it would take to evacuate, although we do have some general assumptions that give us a sense of what that might look like. The second would be looking at the town's physical infrastructure, the roads, to see if there's any opportunity for improvement related to improving that flow of traffic. The way that we think about that work is as a program of the safety element. The safety element lays out a set of broad stroke goals and objectives, and this would be listed within the safety element as one of those programs, likely as completed, and having some subsequent language about what to then do with the information that came out of it. I'll let Laura speak to the housing element piece, but I hope that explains the evacuation piece.
Yeah.
In terms of the relationship to the housing element, the way that we understood the council's direction before was that there was an important connection between these two big pieces of work. And I think one of the planning commissioners said it well, or maybe it was a council member, sorry if I've forgotten, is that the idea is that we want to have a safe housing element. And so we're going to be learning through our safety element and then trying to pull those ideas, those concepts, what we're learning into the housing element update process so that it can shape those policy decisions related to housing. So I think that is the way to see it in terms of how that's going to work literally. We're going to have to work that through with the schedule. So we would be working with the consultant to kind of schedule out a lot of the different tasks so that we could be drawing the information we're learning from the safety element and bringing that to the ad hoc housing element committee for their meetings and discussion as they're shaping policy proposals.
If I could ask a follow-up, but essentially it seems like there's two consultants in total, right? The urban planning partners, they're doing the bulk of the support for the housing element, as well as you're proposing it right here tonight for the safety element.
Correct.
And then there's a carve out part, Jeremy, that you were just describing, which is going to be done by, I'm going to forget the name of this consultant, Freeze and.
We're still looking at
okay.
that.
Okay, there'll be a carve out aspect that will be done by an additional separate party that is specifically just looking at of the evacuation modeling and the infrastructure needs that you just described.
Correct.
Okay.
So there's a couple of different laws. I'm sorry to interrupt.
No, go ahead.
There's a couple of different laws and we're trying to make sure we're addressing all of them in the right places. And so what we've tried to do is pull out the piece that has to be addressed by the safety element and include that in the scope of work that you see tonight. And then from that, there's additional work. So Jeremy's referring to programs that we can do. So we're thinking about getting started on some of those things instead of delaying them until after that safety element work is completed. So that's how I've been thinking about it. That helps me to think it through.
Okay. And then, sorry, one last follow-up, which has to do with the financial. If you rolled up the cost, what you think is going to be for this, the combined work, the safety element, the housing element, and this evaluation and infrastructure, what's the total number there?
Probably looking at, well, the number for the evacuation study is still being discussed with our preferred partner. Regardless of which consultant we go with, it will likely be more than we initially thought in the budget. But the total, and this would include non-general fund dollars as well. So from the grants, you'd be looking at about 425-ish, right in that range, give or take.
Okay.
It's a substantial effort.
Right. Sorry, thank you.
If I could just add one more element to this discussion is that one of the costs associated with this is, of course, the environmental analysis. And so we don't know what level of environmental analysis we will be doing for the additional housing sites, but there will probably be some kind of environmental analysis that needs to be done. And then also we will have to amend our land use element to reflect the zone, well, the additional housing units. And then third, we will probably have to amend our zoning ordinance to implement the housing sites that we have added by way of both the housing element and the land use plan. So
but I thought the cascading impacts of the changes to the housing element, you know, it obviously affects all these other elements, so everything needs to be in sync. I thought that work, Laura, correct me if I'm wrong, is included in what we've planned already. That's not incremental budget, incremental work to what we've planned.
The majority of that is included in what you've already improved, except the additional cost associated with the environmental review.
Okay.
So we've got the majority of that work covered in terms of like the policy work, but we don't know what kind of environmental document that is going to be and the cost of doing that. So we've got money allocated and the contract approves to start the initial steps of that work that will give us the information to then know what level of environmental review is required. And additional funds will be needed in order to cover it, but how much additional funds, we don't know yet, because we don't know what kind of analysis we're going to have.
Will that do it, Sarah?
I have one more, but I feel like I'm monopolizing. Why don't you go ahead?
Do it.
Well, this goes back to budget then, Jeremy. What is incremental in all of this relative to what we approved in the budget? My sense is portion of it is that what is anticipated to be the higher cost of an evacuation study, and a portion is going to be that what we don't know yet from an environmental review.
The question is, what haven't we budgeted yet? Is that the
correct? Question? Yeah, out of this whole umbrella.
What has not been budgeted yet is the remainder of what it may take to bring on a quality consultant for the evacuation study. So we've put in I think there's $20,000 in the budget right now. It will be a bit more than that, but not substantially more. And the components that Laura was just referring to for the environment.
Okay, yep.
No.
Okay, thank you, sorry.
No, this is your job, Sarah, to ask questions. John.
Great question, Sarah, thank you. I just had a question regarding the process description on red page 263. Under the second bullet point on that page, there's a description of general location information and distribution of existing planned uses in very high fire severity zones. And then the next sentence talks about the location and distribution of planned uses of land shall not require defensible space, compliance measured required by state law or local ordinance to occur in publicly owned lands or space in the designations of homeowners associations. Can you explain that, please?
I would love to be able to explain it well, but that is a direct quote from the state law.
That's what I was afraid of.
So I can tell you what the way that I'm understanding it is that they have a little carve out, right, for certain types of uses where that doesn't apply. That is an example of something we're going to have to get into and make sure that we understand it when we're doing the work.
Okay, and just to be clear, also, the consultant that comes on at the very beginning during the research and gathering information and data, is he involved from the very beginning?
Yes, from the very beginning.
Okay, and then at what point is the planning commission drawn into the process? Is that toward the beginning, or is that after the staff has done a fair amount of work?
I think when we have the draft policies and implementation, that's when we would take it to all of the different committees and then also to the planning commission. And then we would go back and work on that a little bit more, create a complete draft plan, and then that draft plan would go back to planning commission for their thorough review.
Great. Okay, thank you.
If I could just chime in on one more element, the fire maps that we are required to incorporate into the safety element have been anticipated to come out, past several months. They have not. It's very frustrating for all of the cities who are on this cycle. We are still required to submit a safety element and an approved housing element by January 1, 2023, and we don't have the maps yet. We also have there's also pending legislation that would require us to also look at high fire hazard areas. And again, that legislation is pending, and we don't know whether that will pass, and then what type of process we would need to follow to incorporate the high fire hazard areas, because there is currently no process for doing that at a local level. So I just wanted to preview these issues. It's been a very difficult process to line all of the ducks in a row, and I think Laura and her team have just done a great job of doing that, but there will be hiccups along the way.
Thanks, Cara. Jeremy?
If I may, I wanted to offer a few things. First of all, I wanted to thank Laura publicly for how much time she's put into finding an #1 class consultant. It is rare that a small city, small town like Portola Valley gets the quality of the consultants on both Urban Planning Partners and Fair and Peers. These are Cadillac level consultants, and that was no accident. Laura worked very hard to make sure that we had quality consultants applying. So I wanted to thank you, Laura, for what you've put into this. The town really is going to get an excellent product at the end of this journey. Secondly, I thought, given that we've talked a little bit about the evacuation study, I might just take a few minutes with your permission, Mayor, just to talk a little bit about that study a little bit further, and actually some of the work that the town staff has done already around these issues, and some of the assumptions that we've been sharing with the consulting teams that we're considering for the evacuation study that I think would be useful. And I do plan to put this in, I actually have a draft email that I want to send to the community so they have more information, because evacuations are clearly a topic of conversation. One area that is interesting to us is understanding what the current road capacity is in town. And we do regular traffic counts. The last was done in October of 2019. There was one done in 2013. The 2019 is the one we've been using primarily here. And we looked at there are 3 roads, Portola, Alpine, and Rasadero roads. And we looked at the busiest hour of the day combined, that might be 7 a.m. northbound and 8 a.m. southbound, to get an idea of what a max hour could look like. On Alpine Road, approximately 1,000 cars an hour can come through in a busy morning, both ways. On Portola Road, about 650 cars, and on Rasadero, just under 350. So we know that a busy morning could, and this was just 1 week's worth of data, could theoretically have close to 2,000 cars traveling through town. one way or another. So as a base level understanding road capacity, that was useful, we thought. We also know in talking from traffic consultants that your average single lane road, so take one of the two lanes on, say, Portola Road, can take about 2,000 cars an hour without traffic. In an evacuation emergency, they usually discount it to about 1,000 cars an hour. We also know that on a at the on-ramps and on-ramps for freeways, if it's metered, you can get about 900 cars max an hour on the freeways. So we have, and we've shared this with the potential consultants, so we have a good basis for an initial understanding of what the road capacity is. Using the Zone Haven tool and census data, we look at how many households, how many people per household. The last census data had 2.7 in Portola Valley. We looked at how many total households there might be in the greater Portola Valley area that could use our roads in an evacuation. On a bad day, on a busy day, that could be 7,500 cars. It's likely less. So just using that kind of base assumptions, you start to get a sense of what it may take for people to evacuate. I'd also add that I was reading a study in Ashland, Oregon, and there are very, very few studies like the ones that we're about to undertake on time. They looked at how long it takes somebody from when they hear the evacuation order to when they leave, 100%. How long does that take for that 100% total subgroup to leave? Because not everybody leaves. In Ashland, they estimated it to be 3 hours. So not everyone leaves when an evacuation is called at the same time. They leave at different times. So, you know, and in these formal conversations that we're having with consultants to see what come on board, we've been sharing that information, and, you know, we have a level of comfort around our assumptions that get us to a number of 1 to 2 hours potentially for an evacuation. If routes start to get blocked for certain reasons, it can be longer than that. That's not a number I'm going to hang my hat on in any way. This is why we have an evacuation study underway, but that's the information that we're using to start this out. And as I said, we're on the forefront. This is essentially a burgeoning discipline that is really based off of evacuation studies in the East Coast for hurricanes. It's just not something that has happened here. Very thankful that Fair and Piers is going to be involved in the safety element, because I'm aware that there's at least one other city that they're considering doing a similar evacuation study. So I thought I would share that. Again, I know it's on people's minds, but I wanted to say that publicly at this meeting tonight, not to make anyone complacent. The most important thing anyone can do in emergency is have a go bag and leave early. Don't wait till you see flames. Don't wait till you're told, leave. But there's places that I've seen that have done a little bit of this work. It's few. Ashland, Oregon, 25,000 people. It takes them 4 hours to evacuate, and they're right on the freeway. Other cities have these issues. So the number itself is not the magic issue. The concept is leave early, leave quickly. Don't take all of your cars. There's 2.7 people, as I said, per household here. So we're not going to see people drive 4 cars out of a household of 2.7 people. That's not possible. So I hope that provides some level of understanding about the area we're operating in right now. And as I said, there'll be more in messages from me. I also wanted to thank Lieutenant Myers and Chief Lindner and Dale Fowle and Michael Tomars from the committees. We all got together to prepare that message that went out, just to share why the town has not conducted a drill in the past. Having talked to Sophie last week, really appreciated the conversation I had with Sophie. I wish her success in what she's doing. But just took the opportunity right now since we're talking about these issues. Thanks.
Thanks, Jeremy. Are there other questions for staff? Okay, members of the public?
It looks like there is one more.
I see there's at least one. Dave Cardinal?
It looks like Sarah had her hand up from the council.
Did she?
I just wanted to make a very quick comment that I really appreciated that overview and the logic that goes into thinking about that from like a broad scale of, you know, quantitatively looking at the total population, the roads, the throughput, the neighboring communities. There's a lot of variables, and hearing it from that perspective is really helpful. And I'm really glad that I know I speak for everybody on the council, that we're glad we're doing the study to be looking at it broadly, objectively, quantitatively that way. So thanks.
Yes, staff is on this. I know that not everybody believes that, but they are on it. Dave Cardinal.
Sure, thanks. First, yeah, thanks for Jeremy. The points about the evacuation study, I wouldn't say 1 to 2 hours, and I'm happy to take any of the council members and anybody else through some of the modeling that's out there. But more importantly, what I wanted to say is, as far as the fire numbers, I think we're not going to get much. The truth is that the fire planners are replanning monthly because of the new wind conditions, and they're pretty much in a spin cycle. And the last time that they proposed things in 2007 and put almost all of Portola Valley in the high fire risk area, we appealed it, and it took another 18 months for that to settle out. So I'm not, it'd be great if we got a map tomorrow, but my guess is by the time we have to make a decision, we may not have a new final map, which might be good for us in a way, because it won't be as bad as it might be. I just wanted to pass that along. I'm not optimistic.
Thank you, Dave.
Thanks.
Mayor Derwin, may I make a comment to that too? The fire map's relevancy has been primarily around a few areas, primarily the use of Chapter 7A for the building code. And as this council knows, and I think people on this attending tonight know, the council did not adopt the map at the time, but instead adopted 7A for the entire town, which was pretty innovative. The map, we all know that we're in a WUI, regardless of whether a map says this is very high fire or high or moderate. What's important for us to certainly understand is what the state is going to require us to do using that particular information. And that's where we're still in this area of unknown. Cara was speaking to it, particularly around the high fire. High fire severity zone designation doesn't have a particular code use for local responsibility areas that have their own fire department like us. It doesn't SRA. I would argue that doesn't make a whole lot of sense, but that's the way that it is. So we're likely going to see more legislation that refers to the maps at different levels, but that hasn't been the case before. But again, we understand the community we live in, and the town won't be, except in extraordinary circumstances, adopting wildfire resiliency efforts that only apply to one area. It'll be more and more applied to the entire town as much as possible. Thanks.
Going back to the community, I see a hand up. Dana.
Dana, you may need to unmute yourself.
There, Dana Breen, 4680 Alpine Road. I think it's very important that the town residents are involved in the conception of the safety element language, not in reaction to it. There should be resident participation with a consultant. And traditionally, as we have worked on the general plan over the years, there has been lots of resident involvement in the conception of the language. So I really don't want to have a consultant come and say, and sort of propose it all and say, what is your reaction to it? So I hope that you invite the residents into the process. Thank you.
Thank you. Are there other members of the public who would like to speak?
There's one more.
Ellen Bernatza.
And Ellen, you may need to unmute yourself at your end.
Sorry, am I there now?
Yes,
Yeah.
now we can hear you.
Okay, I'm at 120 Nathorst. I just have a question as far as the exit strategies during a fire, and even thinking of using a Rastadero when all of upper Page Mill and possibly even Skyline people will be coming down that road, possibly not allowing us exit in addition to those people coming down the hill at the other end of Arastadero. So I think that should be taken into consideration as far as, what exit plans we have here. So I think Alpine Road is the only real exit we would be able to have.
Would you like me to speak to that, Mayor Derwin?
Sure.
Yes, please.
Yeah, Ellen, thank you for your comments. I appreciate it. It's good to meet you. In the event of an evacuation warning or order, which will incidentally not be called by the town, it will be called by fire professionals. They will make that call. It may very well be that town staff and council members will be made aware of the evacuation call by an SMC alert, not through some other means, because of the nature of the situation. They'll make that call and they'll make determinations on what routes are available. Should also note that, as what happened at the CZU fire last year, prior to the evacuation warnings and orders that were called, deputies from the San Mateo County Sheriff's Office, as well as mutual aid police departments, were sent up into those communities where they had sufficient numbers to direct traffic out of those communities. So it really depends on what the type of emergency is, how long it is before a fire may come to the community, what routes might be unavailable or not. The Zone Haven tool has been very useful in understanding the particular areas that might be impacted, as you mentioned in this case, and coming out of unincorporated areas of Santa Clara County into Los Altos Hills. And this would all be through the direction. That's also would be a very large evacuation order. That's pretty significant. So depending again on the emergency, they might do it differently or do them in some particular order. But it just depends on what we're facing. Thanks.
Okay. I'm looking for more hands. I do not see them. So I'll bring it back to the council for discussion. Yes, Jeff.
I want to thank staff for just, as Jeremy pointed out before, all the work they've done in sort of lining this group up to work with. I actually got the chance to sit in on a phone interview with the lead consultants for this that we're considering, and I found it very informative. I found them very reassuring to talk to, and I do think we are in good hands with them. So I'm very I appreciate the work that's gone into this, and I think I think this is the right way to move forward for us.
Thanks, Jeff. John?
Yeah, I agree. It looks very well thought out. Obviously, there are going to be some discoveries as we go along and figure out what the state means by what they say, and but I think the pattern that's laid out here looks great, and I'd be willing to go ahead with the motion as soon as people are ready.
Sarah or Craig, do you have any comments? No? All right.
All right.
Would you like to make a motion?
I will move that we approve the contract with Urban Planning Partners for planning services.
Second.
Seconded by Craig Hughes. Discussion? Roll call, please, Sharon.
Councilmember Alves.
Aye.
Councilmember Wernicott.
Aye.
Councilmember Richards.
Aye.
Vice Mayor Hughes.
Aye.
Mayor Derwin.
Aye. Thank you. And I just want to echo the thanks from all my colleagues. As usual, stellar job. And it was a huge coup to get Urban Planning Partners as a consultant. I've heard horror stories everywhere about how hard it is to get consultants right now. So good job.
Thank you.
Okay, now we can move on to committee and commission reports, correct? Am I right? Who would like to go first? How about you, Sarah?
Sure, I'll go first. I attended the ASCC meeting the other day. It was very straightforward. Single family residence at 531 Wayside, and it was approved unanimously. The Cultural Arts Committee is that meeting's going to be tomorrow. So there hasn't been a meeting since we last met, but they are moving forward with the live Revive event. They have an amazing logo t-shirt artwork for that. I don't know if that's been shared broadly yet, but I personally think it's super cool. And they are working towards a summer, I don't know what they're calling it, Jeremy, maybe you know what it's going to be called on August 26th, but basically like just the old school summer concert series. They're going to be doing it in the performance lawn, and they have a band, and vaccinations will be required, and it will be outdoors, obviously. So assuming nothing major happens COVID wise between now and then, that's the plan, to try and have our first summer concert series post COVID with that event.
It doesn't, through the chair, we didn't give it a particular name, but just so people know, the band is called Windy Hill. They might read it as Windy Hill's performing live at Town Center. That might be a little confusing on what that means exactly. But the really cool part here is that Windy Hill, one of the musicians is Ryan Breen, who's Dana's son. And he's a heck of a musician and a great member of our committee. So we were really delighted to have him come play. It's really good bluegrassy kind of music. So hope you come.
And the housing element monthly meeting, the first one is this coming Monday. So that's kicking off with that crew next week. And planning commission meeting was canceled last time. So there's no other updates there. That's it.
Can I ask one question? Who is going to run the housing element committee for the first meeting?
Well, at the beginning, my understanding is we nominate a chair. So the staff will run the meeting until a chair is nominated. And I think, I haven't seen the agenda, but we've met to discuss the agenda. And I think either item 1 or item 2 on the agenda is nominating a chair.
Okay.
And a vice chair.
Thank you. Okay, who would like to go next? Craig.
Sure, I can go. Let's see, way back in July, since we didn't have our last council meeting, there was a Trails and Paths committee meeting. I'm scrolling through my notes here, important items. Trails Committee would like to be involved in review of large property fire mitigation plans that are now required. The ranch is having continuing issues with dogs on trails, so there's some discussion of some new signage there. The committee approved putting some new signs in for 6 months on a trial basis to see if it makes any difference. E-bikes have been showing up on trails, which they're not allowed. Motorized vehicles of any kind are not allowed on our trails. So the committee was talking about what they might do for that. Probably education first before anything else. Let's see, Planning Commission. That was the review of the fire safety checklist, which we just saw. Woodside Highlands Road Maintenance District Residents Advisory Committee. They basically covered their paving project, which is wrapped up. They repaved the whole road there from the top to bottom, pretty much. And that project went well and is now completed. And BPTS this month, just the other day. There was a good discussion of parking issues on roads in two locations, one around Windy Hill and one at the bottom of Golden Oak across from Zotz. The Windy Hill one has been ongoing at that committee for a long time through several waves and become much more significant recently with COVID leading to a lot more people using Windy Hill. I think the committee had a very good discussion about both sets of parking things. One, they have formed a subcommittee and made several recommendations that staff is now going to implement some changes essentially for Willowbrook and Portola Road and come up with a plan for approval for some signage, some painting of red curbs, that kind of stuff. And at the bottom of Golden Oak, the discussion is probably going to continue at the BPTS level because the Sheriff's Office, Fire Department, Public Works, and Traffic Safety Engineer all seem to think that everything's fine. The local residents seem to think that there's a big problem there. So they will continue that discussion at BPTS and see if they can why there's this disagreement. Those are all my minutes.
Okay, thanks, Craig. John?
Okay, emergency preparedness meeting last week. There was an update on the current mutual aid effort by our department, our Woodside Fire Department, to other fires in the state, which is pretty substantial. Announcements of upcoming trainings, which are getting a fair amount of patronage, a lot of people signing up, although there is room for more. And then Jeremy went over the fact that we're about to work with a firm to do the evacuation modeling. And then I had to leave that meeting early. So I don't know, Jeremy, if there was anything else that was significant from that meeting.
No, nothing to report.
And then the other one I had was the Equity Committee last night, which Marianne and I both attended. Pretty long meeting, just really trying to get their sea legs, sort of, so to speak, try to figure out how to work through very difficult subject matter and how to work with each other. And I think they made a fair amount of progress last night. And wait and see how it goes from here, I guess. There's no substantial decisions made. A couple of subcommittees were formed, start looking into the town zoning ordinances and whatnot. But yeah, I think it's a phenomenal committee as far as the depth and breadth of types of people we have in there working on it. And I think it's got a really great potential. That was it.
I was at the Equity Committee too. What did I want to say? They still haven't decided whether they want to be equity or race and equity. They're still working on their charter. The subcommittee that I thought was the most interesting you talked about, they're going to finally start looking into all our policies and procedures to see, where there's things that are not equitable. I'm not sure what, but one of the members, Andrew Pierce, did this exact same thing in Palo Alto. So he knows what he's doing. That's all. Jeff.
Yeah. Parks and Rec has had a couple of meetings, mostly focused on their part of the town picnic and the concert in October. They're still working on the dog park, but they've kind of set that aside for a little bit to plan for the other stuff that they're working on. That will be coming back to us at some point. Nature and Science had a couple of events. They had another wildflower symposium. They also had Leslie Field did ICE 911 presentation last week. I believe it was well attended. Let's see, Airport Roundtable formally created a subcommittee to explore the possibility of expanding to include Palo Alto in particular. I'm actually not on the committee, but Celia Taylor and Jeff G from Redwood City are on it, which I think is good. They're bigger cities, so I was fine with that. And let me think. Oh, I missed ASCC because I was out of town, but Sarah covered for me, and I think that's all I had.
Righty, thanks. I have a lot, so I'm doing a new format tonight. I'm going to do the committee reports or commission reports, but then I'm just going to make a list of other things I did to show that I am not an ineffective leader. Anyway, the Sustainability Committee meeting was on July 19. There was a presentation by Cal Water on installation of smart water meters, and there was a presentation by Susan Cordone, who's the conservation coordinator for a great huge portion of Cal Water, including Bear Gulch District. And we really need to get that information out. I was just thinking about that. It's not that helpful that, 6 people in town are aware of all these programs. As far as the smart water meters, we got a really good understanding of what it's going to take to get these things installed. It is going to take a lot of time. They even have to hire people, but it will be done. I'm not sure if it'll be done by the end of the year, but certainly in the early part of next year. Subcommittees, the blackout protection, purchase of a portable solar panel for generation and storage to lend out to residents. They still seem to be kicking that one around. The climate change reading and discussion group was tabled until next month. They want to form a water conservation subcommittee. There was a discussion on the state mandate to reduce water use by 15% and the initial message to the community. And they did decide to participate in the PV Live Revive picnic. The next meeting will start at the new time and date. It will be on a Thursday, I think the third Thursday night of the month at 7 p.m. And that's in the hopes of getting more people to attend. The Resource Management Climate Protection Committee meeting happened on 7/21. There was a PG&E update on efforts to reduce wildfire risk and the PSPS, Public Safety Power Shutoffs. Bill Chang called out Portola Valley specifically as a community that is committed to working with PG&E to trim or cut down trees near power lines. That doesn't happen everywhere. We also had a BOSCA update on water supply reliability. The Water Supply Reliability Roundtable and Drought in San Mateo County. And what that is a group that has formed to start looking at not just, to look at the idea of the one water idea where you're actually looking at other water supplies such as recycled, reclaimed, even wastewater, to potable or non-potable. But they're doing this under the umbrella of BOSCA. And I asked a lot of hard questions such as, why aren't we doing this in San Mateo County? BOSCA does not represent, or every water utility in San Mateo County is not represented by BOSCA. And even those who are, such as Portola Valley has Cal Water, we don't sit on the board, Cal Water sits on the board. So I'm really pushing that because I don't think this is something that BOSCA should be controlling. What else? And then there was a presentation on on-site use of non-potable water in residential and commercial settings and state efforts to establish regulations for various non-potable end uses. This was a presentation by Greg Smith from County Environmental Health. And what was really interesting is he was really pushing gray water recycle, which is a complete turnaround from where they were like 5 years ago. Let's see. We had a special meeting of flood and sea level rise resiliency district because we had to adopt the water pollution control service charges reports for flood zone 1, I don't know, bunch of stuff. We had to do something that was time critical so that they could collect money, was what it was really about, from the flood zone areas. Let me see if there was a little chatter about something here. Let's see. No, there was just an update that the Bayfront Canal and the Atherton Channel project are happening, which is really good to know. And we're still not entirely sure, what's happening with the resilience budget trailer bill, where we hope to get money for the district. Then there was a special meeting. Well, it was actually, I think there's one-on-one, where all the members of the Express Lanes JPA met with the people who were doing the branding for the Express Lanes. So that was actually kind of fun. Okay. And then I kind of wedged myself into a meeting that was supposed to be just for staff. It was Stanford talking about their fire management plans for all their lands, not just Wedge. And it was fascinating. Their consultants, there's Scott Conway who's a forest fire ecologist. There's Tanya Trice from Panorama. She's a environmental consultant. There's another woman who's wildfire management person, and their plan is really impressive. And I came away thinking that we are in really good hands. Jeremy was there too. Did you feel that way, Jeremy?
I did. I share your thoughts on that.
Okay, then there was a meeting that Sarah and I and Jeremy did. It was called the American Rescue Plan Act meeting with local businesses. And I believe the invitation went out to many businesses. Is this correct, Jeremy?
Yes, it went out to all the brick and mortar businesses in Portola Valley.
But we only had 3 attend. We had Carter, Patrick Ruff from the Priory, and Jamie, is it Blattman?
Blattman.
Who's the new head guy at Alpine. And it was still a good meeting. I mean, they talked about how they're doing, anything they need. We talked about the rescue money that we will be getting. And I felt it was, even though there weren't very many people, I still thought it was a good thing to do. And I know that, Jeremy, you've really gone out of your way to let people know that we will have money, correct?
Yes. Yeah, and we're going to continue to engage. I think the challenge is, I think there's some COVID fatigue certainly going on with everyone. But there does look like that there's opportunity for us to certainly contribute some funds to their needs. So we'll continue that engagement.
Okay, and a few other things I was going to add about equity. They want to have an in-person outside meeting, just a one-off kind of thing. And we're going to try to find a time to do that, a very special one, because it's really hard to do their work on Zoom, and it would be great to be in person. Then I also met with the Almanac reporter, Angela Schwartz. I met with, and that was with Jeremy and Craig. I met with, were you there, Craig, or was that another person? Okay. I met with the Rabbi, with Jeremy and Craig. I met with Kim Marinucci from Equity with John. I met with Lucy Neely from Equity with John. I agreed to have myself and my property photographed for a story about insurance non-renewals because no one else would do it. And I really don't like having myself photographed. So that was a big sacrifice, just telling you. This morning I had a call with Sean Charpentier, who's the new ED at CCAG. And I also had a call with CCAG staff about how we can start a one water project or one water program in San Mateo County, because as I said, I am not satisfied with the Bosca idea. Alrighty. Now on to the town manager report. Jeremy?
Thank you very much. So the first thing I wanted to start with was just to show a few elements of the town's website here. I apologize, I had it open a moment ago. We continue to update the town website on a regular basis. As everyone knows, we did a refresh a little earlier this year in the way we present information and what information is being shared. So let me share my screen just for a moment. I wanted to share in particular the updated emergency preparedness information pages, particularly on wildfire preparedness, where you can find all the work that the town, its committees, and others are doing, including evacuation planning. Click into that. This is in part a message that was sent out by 2 of our committee chairs a few months ago. There's information about wildfire preparedness committee and what they're doing. It takes you to their page. Vegetation management program with maps to what we're doing, home hardening work and otherwise. I hope residents will regularly check our website for those updates, and when there's something of substance, we'll certainly send it out as a separate news item to the community. Much of what I was going to say was mentioned here. I did want to briefly comment. We had invited West Bay Sanitary District to attend tonight's meeting to give a presentation on 2 items they were considering: annexation of the entire town and changes in their reimbursement agreements. Both of those efforts are on hold according to their general manager. So they felt as though it was not necessary to come. I thought that was fine, and said if something changes, they were invited to come to a future meeting. Laura mentioned our new senior planner, Adrian Smith. We did do an introduction for her to the community. I hope that you all get a chance to work with her. She's a pretty extraordinarily talented person who comes from the city of Milpitas. She actually was an intern for the town 5 or 6 years ago. So it's nice to see that full circle, and some of that training we did got her to come back. So happy to have her on board. Finally, I'm ending with sad news. Many of you know Brandy DeGarmo, the assistant to the town manager. She is transitioning to a new role with the town in a part-time capacity. That will, at some point may lead to future opportunities in another community. She's made some decisions related to her life to change the way this looks. And all I can say is how much I have enjoyed in working with Brandy and how much I respect her. And I'm going to keep her around as long as I can on a part-time basis in the fall and winter, because she's got some great projects. But for those who know Brandy, and there's many of you who are on the guest list here who do, I hope you do send her a note. What can you say about her? The first, as I know, sustainability analyst hired in the county was with the city, which really proclaimed this town's commitment to those issues, and everything she's done around emergency preparedness, IT, the website and the like. She's something else. I'm going to miss her terribly. She's been a source of comfort and consultation for me, especially in her time as the assistant to the town manager. So we will bring her back before she moves to the part-time role. So you can all say what I know you want to say, which is going to sound just like what I said. But I wanted to say that tonight. That's my report. Thank you.
Thank you, Jeremy. Town Council Digest, July 15. Would anyone like to pull anything? Nope. Okay. July 22. Nope. All right. July 29.
I have a conflict, but is anyone thinking of going to Dave Pine's roundtable?
Yeah, exactly. That's what I'm saying. Is anyone thinking of doing that? I can, what time is it?
9 to 11. I have a commitment part of the morning. I might try to tune in when I can in
Yeah.
between.
Yeah, I might try to tune in too.
Yeah.
Yeah, okay. And I've got to go. August 5. You have any parting thoughts?
Well, I will. I know she will come back and we'll get to say these in person, but I'm sort of, when I first moved to town, before I had anything to do with town government, Brandy was one of the first employees I ever spoke to about various things I was interested in at the time. And it's been great to work with her, and I wish her the best going forward, but it'll be different without her here full time.
Yep, it will. Okay, well then we are adjourned and have a nice evening. It's not that late.
Bye-bye.
Thanks, everyone. Good night.
Good night.
Good night.